how the concept of the potentiality is sneaking in. As we know from earlier, the waves into which particles dissolve are probability waves. As a wave, the material particle has no actual position in space, but many potential positions. Thus, the wave states into which the microphysical object dissolves are potentiality states. When a material particle enters the realm of potentiality, it leaves the empirical world. You can't point it and say, look, it is here, or look, it is there. Such a thing transcends our experience. It is trans-empirical. It transcends the realm of matter. It becomes a transmaterial. You can think numbers, but you can't see them. Yes, you can't think numbers, but you can't see them. Since these are the natural state of the existence for microphysical objects, the states into which they will make spontaneous transitions whenever they can, we can conclude that the visible reality emanates out of the realm of the potentiality that is underlying all things. Once emanated, it sustains itself as a visible world. It is in this way that we are led to the view that physical reality appears to us in two domains: the realm of the actuality of the localized material things, and the realm of the potentiality of the non-material forms that are spread out in space. These forms are real, even though they are invisible, because they have the potential to manifest themselves into the empirical world and act in it. The actuality, the empirical particle, emerges out of its states of the potentiality when it interacts with object in its environment. This rule seems to apply to everything. Wow. The visible world is an actualization, an emanation out of the domain of transmaterial and trans-empirical potentiality forms. The basis of reality is a domain of the transmaterial forms, images, or elementary thoughts. Physical reality is driven by the inner images, like a human being is driven by the images in the mind. Yes. Regarding the mechanism by which it makes a transition from the wave state to a particle state, it is now thought that the properties of matter emerges in the interactions of it with an invisible field called the Higgs field, Higgs boson, Higgs field, that permeates the universe. The possible discovery of the specific elementary particle called the Higgs boson in a recent experiment performed at CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, has given this theory new support. If you think that this view of the thing is hard to accept, many pioneers of the quantum physics will applaud your reaction. Niels Bohr, for example, never accepted that the wave function of the quantum theory are in any way real. The wave function can organize our observation of the things and they allow us to make predictions, he said. But that is it. In his view, the quantum waves are simply some tool or useful formalism. If you want to put it into some fancy terms, you can say that the wave function of quantum physics ain't ontological, but epistemological entities. They are elements of the theory, but not of the physical reality. In some of his writings, Werner Heisenberg offered a similar view. The wave function of the quantum theory, he said, represent our knowledge of the things. David Bohm, another pioneer of quantum physics, thought that the particles and waves are real and coexist at all time, and the wave have the function of the pilots that guides the actions of the particles. Wow! It was only relatively recent that the British physicist C.N. Villars proposed that the wavelets whose actions we encounter at the quantum levels are truly existing entities, which he called potentiality waves. Potentiality waves, because they contain the potential of the Earth system for future empirical events. Yes. In the Villar's description, potentiality waves are conceived as a physically real waves which exist in their own right, not merely as a representation of the behavior of the particles. Microphysical objects are not particles guided in some mysterious way by wave of probability, but rather microphysical objects are the wave of the potential observation interactions. Our potentiality state is generally defined by the fact that the physical property of the system in such a state, as Villas described it, don't have an actual value, but many potential values. Wow. The sort of situation isn't restricted to the position in the space, but can also apply, for example, to the energy of the particle or its direction of motion. As far as position is concerned, when the thing has no specific place in space, it can't be a part of the empirical world. This aspect holds for all potentiality states. When an ET enters the realm of the potentiality, it leaves the empirical world. It enters a state in which it transcends human experience. It becomes a trans-empirical. It doesn't exist as Villar described it. In ordinary three-dimensional space, the empirical particle emerges out of its potentiality states when that states interact with an object in its environment. In that process, the potentiality state necessarily ceases to exist. This establishes the non-empirical character of the potentiality states. Observation destroys them. During the act of the observation, Werner Heisenberg wrote the transition from the possible to the factual takes place. Thus, potentiality states are necessarily non-empirical because when we take a look, they disappear. Yes. That they must be invisible also follows necessarily from the fact that they are empty. They carry no mass or energy. We can't see empty numbers. Yes. Potentiality waves are invisible not only because they are numbers, but also because they represent a state of waiting to be actualized. Wow. In the actualization, they cease to exist. Wow. Visible objects are always somewhere. Even though you don't know me, you know that while I am alive, I must be at some point on this globe. At that particular point, the probability to find me is 1 or 100%. I can't be in the state where the probability to find me is 10% in my home, 10% in the pub down the street, 10% driving in my car, and so forth. This isn't the case for ETs that exist in the network of potentialities. It seems that the interplay between the actuality and the potentiality in the physical reality is quite general. The visible world is an actualization, an emanation out of the realm of trans-empirical and trans-material potentiality. We don't know with a certainty the nature of the form in the realm of the potentiality. After all, they are invisible. But physics posits that they are waves. It might be more precise to say that the form of realm of potentiality interact with the world as though they were waves. There are indications that the waves in the realm of potentiality are hanging together like the waves, like water waves in the ocean, so that reality is an indivisible wholeness. Indivisible wholeness. The one in which all things are interconnected. Really? I think this author, the Lothar Schafer, simplifies the things too much, because really, there is only the one. With this, we have arrived at an important goal of our journey. The basis of the visible world is invisible, non-material wholeness. Reality appears to us in the two domains, the visible world of the material things and the invisible realm of the potentiality. The visible world is an emanation out of the realm of the forms. When the material particles dissolved in the potentiality waves, they cease being material particles. Instead, they transform into something that we can describe only as invisible mathematical forms, the numerical shapes that transcend the realm of matter. The basis of the visible world is a realm of hidden images. The emergence of the wave-like properties in the behavior of the elementary particles forces us to accept some amazing conclusions regarding the nature of the physical reality. There is a realm of the universe that has a nature of potentiality, a realm that isn't made up of visible, material, and energetic things, but of the invisible mathematical forms, patterns of the information or images. People who aren't comfortable with the trans-empirical and non-material reality often argue that many interpretations of the quantum theory exist that are all possible and yet contradictory. Yes. That's why studying mathematics is a key to understand everything, key to realize the things, right? Yes. Of course. Oh. Cool. Yes. The idea of the trans-empirical reality, they say, is yet another meaningless interruption. It is true that contradictory interpretations of the quantum theory exist, and experiment can't distinguish between them. However, these contradictory interpretations all share one common feature. To explain the visible world, they all employ aspects of the reality that are non-empirical. Potentiality is a physical state of the universe, invisible, trans-empirical, and trans-material, but powerful and real. In an empirical science that claims that the world can be understood by observing and measuring its visible surface, the discovery of the realm of the potentiality was a shock. It marked the end of the era of the Newtons and Darwinian materialism and the dawn of the new idealist era that seeks the essence of the world in the transcendent part of the reality. For the understanding of your own nature, the discovery was a triumph. Since the realm of potentiality exists in the universe, it can also exist in you as an inner potential that takes you beyond the limited possibility of your material body and brain. Thank you!